Prologue. Pete's eyes roved over his sheet of paper. There was a drop of blood. He dropped his pen and looked at his hands. There was not an open wound in sight. The drop of blood spread out like the roots of a tree. A monstrous fear gripped him as he stood up from his desk and watched the roots expand. His mouth opened like a deep cave, but no sound emerged. He stretched out his hands to hold back unknown forces, his face a mask of horror. On the bloodied paper, in black ink, were the words Chapter 13. A familiar woman's voice whispered into his ear. He woke up gasping for air, damp from trickles of ice-cold sweat. His nightmare was far from over. Chapter 1, 1981. Chapter 13 found Pete sitting before a blank sheet of paper, unable to move any further past the events that had taken place 10 years ago. The tip of his pen touched the paper, but his eyes stared blankly into space. It would be an exciting moment for most writers, reaching the conclusion, but this was not the case for Pete. He snapped out of his daze and dropped his pen, covering his face with his hands. It almost seemed like an impossible task, writing Chapter 13. He had failed to write the final chapter. Even after many attempts, he didn't know where to start. The words just didn't seem to translate from thought to sentences. Pete looked at the clear glass of water that sat on the table in his hotel room. It reminded him of the island of Marigua and its beautiful waters. Memories of the island started to flood his thoughts. His body could almost feel the heat of the island, just as he had first felt it when he arrived in Marigua in the summer of 1971. His breathing started to get heavy, and he stood up from his desk. Falling backwards onto the hotel's single bed, he covered his face with both hands. He felt paralyzed by painful thoughts, guilty and angry with himself. Fear and anxiety began to grip him. He had contemplated not writing his final book on so many occasions, but his fan base had been eagerly waiting, and he knew it would be a huge letdown if he came this far and failed to complete it. Pete had promised his fans he would deliver a final book before he took a new job as a lecturer at Boston University. Naturally, his fans were upset, but he mentioned that it was something he needed to do, take a break from writing and move on to something different for a few years, with the promise that he might one day write again. Pete sat up. The table lamp illuminated the pen and paper that rested on the table with a ghostly silence. The events that had taken place on the island had been buried so long in his heart. He knew that it needed to be said, and he felt that writing this novel would be the best way for him to reach some sort of closure. Maybe it could even help him find peace. He took a moment and closed his eyes. The sound of waves filled his ears. He could almost feel the wind blowing against his hair, as it had many years ago. He could taste the salt in the air. The vivid clear waters of Marigua engulfed his vision, and he remembered how he had felt as the ship blew its horn, announcing it was ready to leave Boston. This clearly was no distant memory. Pete could feel the same emotions he had felt that very day. He was young, enthusiastic, hopeful, and ambitious. Pete opened his eyes. Julia. The name flashed across his mind as a painful reminder. He sometimes wished that he had never gone to that island. Then he never would have met her. His heart cried out her name. It always felt like a stab in his heart. Their lives had become intertwined for just 2 months, but the painful memories it had given him had lasted over a decade. It almost felt like yesterday. He wished that there was a way he could switch off his brain to those thoughts.